God bless once more. I hope you're back for God's law. This is Brother Darren, just picking up on another post. So this post is entitled Allah, Elahi, Alahai, or Allah, Alaha, and Elohim. Is Allah Yahweh? Part 1. Now, the reason for the creation of this post was I go up to Leicester Square every so often with some brothers that I met in Christ up in Victoria, which is near to my place of work. Brother Ronaldo, Brother DJ, and Brother Messe. And I suppose the day that we go up there is part of wider campaigning in ministry and outreach by brothers in Christ to share the gospel, pray for healing, and do the Lord's work. Now, when we go up to Leicester Square, we have a stand that we put up, but we're also alongside a tarot card reader, and we are also alongside some Muslims that are up there. I've had a discussion or a couple of conversations with some of the Muslims up there, one in particular, and I challenged him firstly with the fact that Allah is just Arabic for God. Even Arab Christians use it. It's not the name of God, and it's certainly not the name of the God in the Bible. The God of the Bible's name is Yahweh, and this is first attested to in Soleb in Sudan around the 15th century BC, the 14th century BC, under Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who left an inscription on the temple in Soleb identifying enemies of Egypt, I think northeast of Egypt, called the Shasu of Yahweh, who I've already submitted were none other than the Israelites, or a mixed multitude that had left out of the land of Egypt. However, he said he was going to go away and do the research to look into this. He never came back to me with that point in particular, so I'm not so sure how much research he did. But what he tried to submit to me is that Yahweh is not in the New Testament, and also that the God of the Bible is Allah. So, or that's the name that is used. So I know that's incorrect because I've done the study, and as I mentioned, we know that Arab Christians use Allah. But let's look at the study in order to kind of understand truth. So, is Allah Yahweh? Part 1. So the first thing he said to me was that Jesus spoke Aramaic, and that Aramaic for God is Allah. But it's not. It's actually Alaha, but we'll get to that. But Elah is Aramaic for God. It's a northwestern Semitic language, Aramaic. But the oldest attestation for a northwest Semitic language is in Amorite. Now, the word Allah has been used by Arabic people of different religions since pre-Islamic times. More specifically, it's been used as a term for God by Muslims, both Arab and non-Arab and Arab Christians. Cognates, which are parallels of the name Allah, exist in other Semitic languages, including Hebrew and Aramaic. The corresponding Aramaic form is Elah, but its emphatic state is Ilaha. It is written as Ilaha in Biblical Aramaic and Alaha in Syriac, as used in the Assyrian Church, and also the Syriac, or should I say the Aramaic Peshitta Bible. Now, both simply mean God. Biblical Hebrew mostly uses the plural but functional singular form Elohim, but more rarely it also uses the singular form Eloha. Now, Elahai is Aramaic and means my God. Elah means God. Name for God is also one in Aramaic. The I after Elah means my. In the Old Testament, Elahai is found only in the books of Ezra and Daniel. The Peshitta, the Syria Bible, has the name as Alaha, not Allah. Neither is it associated with the crescent moon god of Islam, as propagated by the so-called Prophet Muhammad. Now, Aramaic is a language or group of languages belonging to the Semitic subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language family, as defined by scholars, I guess. More specifically, is part of the Northwest Semitic group, which also includes the Canaanite languages such as Hebrew and Phoenician. The Aramaic alphabet was widely adopted for other languages and is ancestral to the Hebrew, Syriac, and Arabic alphabets. Northwest Semitic is a division of the Semitic languages, comprising the indigenous languages of the Levant. It would have emerged from Common Semitic in the early Bronze Age. It's first attested in proper names identified as Amorite in the Middle Bronze Age. The oldest coherent texts are in Ugaritic, dating to the late Bronze Age, which by the time of the Bronze Age collapse are joined by Old Aramaic, and by the Iron Age by the Canaanite languages, which are Phoenician and Hebrew. Now, Ilah in Arabic, or Alaha, is an Arabic term meaning deity or God. The feminine is Ilaha, meaning goddess. With the article, it appears as Al-Ilaha. The Arabic word for God, Allah, is thought to be derived from it. Ilah is cognate to Northwest Semitic El and Akkadian Elohim. Now, according to the Bible, after the flood, people that were descended from the sons of Noah journeyed from the east of the mountains of Ararat to the plains of Shinar, Sumer, which is modern-day Iraq. Now, Shem was one of the sons of Noah in the Hebrew Bible as well as in Islamic literature. The children of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Now, just to digress a little bit, these sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram, can actually be found historically or descent or lineage from them in Iran for Elam. Asher would be Iraq, Arphaxad is Iraq, Lud I believe is Anatolia or parts of Turkey, and Ararat, and Aram would be Syria. Now, Abraham, the patriarch of the Hebrews and the Arabs, was one of the descendants of Arphaxad. Now, in Genesis 11, we read from verse 1 to 2, "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there." Now, Proto-Semitic or Common Semitic is a hypothetical reconstructed language, ancestral to the historical Semitic languages. A 2009 study proposes that it was spoken from about 3750 BCE, or before Christ, in the Levant during the early Bronze Age. Now, this language that they all spoke would have likely been Proto-Semitic, if not for the actual term, the original language for these descendants of Noah. Now, this would have been subdivided at Babel into divisions of Semitic language. So, for those of you that are not familiar with the Tower of Babel story, I'd suggest you read that, because this is where in the Bible God confuses their language, and people are scattered and migrate away from one another as a consequence. Now, there's an interesting quote from the Assyrian king, King Ashurbanipal, and I've taken it from the ancient EU website. Ashurbanipal, one of the kings of the mighty Neo-Assyrian Empire, who lived between 668 to 627 BC, or was also known as Assurbanipal. Now, he was the last of the great kings of Assyria, and his name means the god Asher is creator of a hare. And he was the son of King Esarhaddon of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. In the Hebrew Tanakh, a Christian Old Testament, he is called Asenappa or Snapper in Ezra 4, verse 10. The Greeks knew him as Sardanapalus, and the Romans as Sardanapalus. He achieved the greatest territorial expansion of the Assyrian Empire. Now, in the library of King Ashurbanipal were found library tablets. He had a great library. And one of the library tablets said the following: I, Ashurbanipal, within the palace, understood the wisdom of Nabu, who was his god of learning, all the art of writing of every kind. I made myself the master of them all. I read the cunning tablets of Sumer and the dark Akkadian language which is difficult to rightly use. I took my pleasure in reading stones inscribed before the flood. So the source used there is ancient EU. Also, the quotes that I'm taking are general quotes from Wikipedia. Now, Amorite is an extinct early northwestern Semitic language, and this was spoken by Amorite tribes, and we've got attestation to that going back to the end of the 3rd and 2nd millennium BC. So to try and make the language of the Bible or Aramaic originate from Arabic and from what was Allah, as if it was the same Allah that Muhammad proclaimed, is slightly, could I put it? It's it's not correct for want of better words. So we can clearly see that it's a Northwest Semitic language that the Aramaic comes from, and that in turn is supposed to have possibly come from a common Semitic, which was even in place from before the Tower of Babel and before the flood, because Ashurbanipal has no problems, from as far as we can really see, reading text from before the flood. Now, it's generally thought that Elohim is derived from Eloah, the latter being an expanded form of the Northwest Semitic noun Il. The related nouns Eloha and El are used as proper names or generics, in which case they're interchangeable with Elohim. Allah, once again, is the Arabic word for God in Abrahamic religions. Now, that's slightly misleading, because it's not. But in the English language, the word generally refers to God in Islam. The word is thought to be derived by a contraction from Alaha, which means the God, and again is related to El and Elah, the Hebrew and Aramaic words for God. End of part 1.